Hi there, welcome back to Still Waters ASMR. I started recording this video and then I realised that I was probably going into too much detail. So this video is going to be about lambing. I'm going to give you a bit of an update on how it's been going because that's basically been my life for the past month. I would apologise about my hair, but it is what it is. It's on my head. I can't get rid of it. I could just shave it all off, but it's there. And I can't really be bothered doing anything about it right now, so it's just going to be what it is. What was I going to say? Listen, I've actually already started recording this video. I got like a good 15 minutes in and then was like, no, let's not go into that level of detail. You might be eating your lunch or something. But I am going to talk about lambing. I am going to talk about the realities of it. I'm not going to go into as much gory detail as I had. But I'm going to sort of mention about the realities. So if you are squeamish or don't like hearing about life and death, then it's maybe not the video for you. I will try and keep it like censored, sort of suitable for children type thing. I'll try and bear that in mind as if I was telling it just to a child. And at the end I'm going to have some clips from lambing time. So if you want to see some cuteness, then hang about to the end. So yeah, basically it's now the 11th of May and we have been lambing since the 8th of April. We have one sheep left to go who, if she doesn't lamb soon, I'm gonna catch her and actually check that she is actually pregnant and not just fat, because she might just be fat. The way she runs around, you'd believe that she wasn't pregnant at all, but she could still be pregnant. But the way to check is to well, you can do an ultrasound scan if you have the equipment, but we don't. But one way to check is to, if a ewe is approaching giving birth, which they should be by now if they haven't already, then you basically sort of tip them up, set them on their bum basically, and check their udder. If they are not going to have a lamb, there will be no udder, like, you know, there won't be any, it will be like filling up. But just like with people, if they are going to have a baby, then it'll be starting to like fill up with milk and get ready for feeding the baby, and so they'll have an udder. So that's like the easy way to check. You know, are they about to give birth? Do they have an udder? There was a couple of the sheep who didn't have an udder at all, so we knew that they weren't going to have babies this year. So how has lambing been going? It has been going horrendous, to be completely honest. There's a common phrase with livestock farmers: where you have livestock, you will also have dead stock, and it's, you kind of have to accept the life and death aspect of working with sheep and cows and whatever else, chickens, whatever. But this year it has felt like the writer of Game of Thrones was like scripting lambing this year. Like, after the first like week, I was just too terrified to get attached to anything, because I was like, that's the ones that's gonna die. It seems like the ones that you get the most attached to are the ones that keel over, and so it's I've been terrified to get attached to anything this year. It's been particularly bad this year. I am going to do a separate video talking about ethics of animal farming, because I see a lot of like vegan commentary online, and I do listen to what folk have to say, and I do go away and think about it and sort of weigh it up sort of in my heart and make sure that I am 100% comfortable with what I do. Because bearing in mind, I'm not just a farmer, I don't just bring the sheep into the world, I also work at the abattoir as a slaughter person, so I kill all the sheep at the end of their life. So, and I sleep at night, So it's, you know, either I'm a monster or I'm at peace with what I'm a part of. So I'm going to do a separate video about that, but that's not what we're going to go into today. Today we're just going to be talking about lambing time. Now, the realities of lambing. So some people will scan so also to clarify, so we do outdoor lambing. We do like springtime lambing. Some people will do indoor lambing, so they'll do like winter lambing. There's a whole bunch of pros and cons to different ways of doing farming. The benefits of lambing indoors is you're getting the sheep out of the weather. You can keep a closer eye on them. A lot of people will have like cameras set up so you can easily check them during the night. You can easily identify if there's a sheep having problems, so you can intervene quicker and, you know, save lives from that perspective. It's easier for the farmer because then you're not having to work out in horrible weather and you can see your sheep and you know what's going on. You can lamb earlier in the year, and because you don't have to worry about weather, and then that means by the time you get to like the autumn and like sheep sales, and your lambs will be a good size. So there's some benefits, there's some downsides of lambing indoors, and that is that there's more bacteria, and so there's more risks of a whole host of different illnesses and issues. So for example, like mastitis and navel ill and joint ill in lambs. It's basically where the umbilical cord is. If there's any bacteria that get into the umbilical cord, it can cause a whole bunch of illnesses, which is why farmers will always iodine the umbilical cord to help keep it clean and sterile, and to help prevent infection. Because obviously we're not just you can't just inject everything with antibiotics. I think in the past people used to do that, but obviously for obvious reasons you really can't do that because overuse of antibiotics leads to antibiotic resistance. So we iodine navels, but it's just harder to keep things clean when it's indoors. There's more risk of illnesses and issues, infections. Apologies. My apologies. And there's also a higher feed cost. If you're doing indoors, you have to put, you have to do all the bedding, and you have to feed the animals because they're not out on the grass. So you're having to feed them concentrates and haylage or hay or silage or something. So there's much higher costs involved lambing indoors. There's more risks involved, but then there's also benefits. Less chance, for example, of a ewe having a lamb and toddling off and leaving it. Less chance of a ewe having difficulties and you not realising. But for us, what we do is we lamb outdoors in the springtime. So we sort of April, May time, when it's hopefully not terrible. I mean, in Shetland, we have what they know as the lambing snow. So in April and May, you can get snow. I think they've even had snow in June before. But we are far more likely to have snow at Easter than snow at Christmas. Like we very rarely get snow in like December, January sort of time. It's more likely to be March, April. So we did start lambing time with snow falling. Thankfully it didn't lie, but it was falling. So it was bitterly cold. We also, because we lamb outdoors and it's just my husband and I, unless we did have some help from family, grandparent, like our parents, our daughter's grandparent, did come and help, which was such a massive help. My stepson came and helped during his Easter holidays and things like that. So, but because it is like a small team and we don't have a lot of sheep, we basically check them at night before bed, before it gets dark, and then they're kind of on their own until it gets light in the morning. And we did lose one lamb because of that this year. The mother had started lambing in the middle of the night and had complications, and by the time we found her in the morning, unfortunately the lamb was dead. I was able to deliver the lamb and save the ewe, but sadly it was a bad outcome for the lamb. So that's one of the risks that you take. I mean, short of going out in the middle of the night with a torch trying to find sheep in a field in the dark, which isn't easy. It's one of those tricky things where you kind of have to. There's no system that's perfect, and every system will have problems, and you have to just try and minimize those problems. So yeah, so we're lambing this time of year. I'm sure I had a point to all this. Yeah, so some people will scan their sheep while they're pregnant, and they'll then divide out and feed accordingly. So the ones with multiples will feed more, the ones with singles will feed a little bit less. You don't want to get the singles growing too big, because you have a really big lamb, it makes it more issues for getting the lamb out. We have a small flock, so we don't scan, but the understanding is that between scanning and, for those that do, and sort of the end of lambing, so that's the lambs all arrived and established well, feeding and everything, you expect an average of about a 15% loss. That is like, a 15% loss is like expected, like normal, sort of. You wouldn't be panicking about that, which it does sound like quite a lot, but there's a whole bunch of reasons. So that's from ewes that have been scanned in lambs. You know what they did take, because you know when you put the ewes to the rams, some of them might not take, so some of them might not. It's very similar to people. Some of them might not get pregnant. Some of them might have fertility issues. Here on our farm, what we do is we give them 3 strikes. So they'll get 3 years, and if after 3 years they still haven't produced any lambs, then like, well, we're not going to keep them as a pet. They'll, go in the freezer basically. But then it means they've had 3 years of living out on the farm, living their best life, getting fed. So if they have taken, so they have gotten pregnant, they might have, 15% losses, they might have had a miscarriage. There may have been lambing complications. There may have been something external that's taken the lamb, like a bird or some kind of predator type creature, like a dog strike or something. Thankfully, where we live, we don't really have to deal with dog strikes, like dog attacks. There's some places where you just hear these horror stories of like people's dogs, like pet dogs, just destroying sheep, and it would be devastating for the farmers. So please keep your dog on a lead, even if it's got good recall. Just keep it on a lead when around livestock. The lamb might not make it because it might have illness or feeding issues. So we'll kind of go through and discuss all of those. We've had all of the above this year. So 2 years ago, we have a small farm. It's a croft, which is like a small holding protected by special laws in Scotland. And it's not a big bit of ground. Last year we had 20. The last 2 years we've had 20 ewes giving birth. 2 years ago we had quite a high ratio of singles rather than twins in lambs. 3 sheep never gave birth, so we don't know if they just didn't get pregnant or if they had miscarriages. But we only lost 1 lamb. Like, out of the lambs that were born, we only lost 1, which was really good. Like, that's a good lambing. The following year, so last year, we had like 100% pregnancy rate, so all of the sheep gave birth. We had 75% twins ratio, so it was like amazing with the number of twins. But we had 20% lambing losses. So I think the final number of lambs we got was about the same as the year before. You know, when all was said and done. Because we had more lambs born, but then we had more dying, so it ended up being about the same living at the end of lambing as the year before. But so my dad was like, "Oh, well, it's all balanced out," and I'm like, "Well, I'd rather have had the year before where less were pregnant, less, you know, they gave birth to less lambs, but you didn't have as many losses, and so it's not as emotionally harrowing than having great numbers in the 100% pregnancy rate, the 75% twins, and then losing so many animals, because that was devastating, like emotionally devastating, really, really hard. So that was last year. We said 20%, so that's like, if you think the 15% is, you'd be like, that's okay. So it was a bad year. It was our worst year ever. It was a bad year. This year we had more than twice the number of sheep going to the ram, and we put a lot of work in trying to address the issues from last year. Last year we had a lot of bird strikes. We had a lot of birds getting lambs, so we changed the fields that we were putting our youngest lambs into, sort of reconfigured how we were doing it, and that has made a difference. We've only lost one lamb to birds this year so far, touch wood. So that's good. It's, you know, it's nice that they're not dying from the same things, but this year we had more sheep giving birth, more lambs, and more losses than last year. Percentage wise, I think we're about the same. We're somewhere between 18 and 20%. We've not fully finished lambing yet, so it's hard to pin that down, but we're about the same in terms of percentage of losses as last year. But because we've had more lambs, that means we've had more dead ones, and it has been horrendous. Like, it's been a really tough month. We've lost a yow. We started lambing with a dead yow and 2 dead lambs. And she was like, because I'd been sitting nursing her for several weeks because she'd been poorly, I got really attached to her. So that was really, really hard. And then we had one miscarried lamb, which I'll talk about, and then we've had 10 dead, like full-term dead lambs. And then in the mix of all that, while we've been dealing with all of the yows giving birth, 2 of last year's lambs, which will be put to the ram like this coming year, and they'll be giving birth next year for the first time. 2 of last year's yow lambs kicked the bucket too. One went over the cliffs, and the other one, we don't really know what happened with her. We just found her in the field one morning. So that was like really just so disheartening, because we've been working so hard to look after these animals and to do the best by them, and we've been learning more. I've been doing courses, I've been learning as much as I can, we've been changing how we do things, we've been trying to improve how we do things, with, you know, minerals and vitamins and feeding and trying to have the animals in the best condition possible, and it's really frustrating when it doesn't go well. So I'm just going to talk a bit about the losses involved at lambing time. So just like with humans, I said sometimes they don't get pregnant in the first place. That's perfectly natural, that's perfectly normal. They also, miscarriages happen, and again, just like with humans, like 1 in 4 women has a miscarriage. Like, they are very common and they're very normal. Like, for humans, like, I don't think a sheep really notices that she's miscarried. Like, you don't notice any difference in their emotional state. For a human, obviously, it's devastating. Sheep, so don't really notice, but it is natural. Sometimes if it's early on, they'll just absorb it back. Other times they might. So we did find a fetus out in the field. We went out to feed the sheep one day, and there was like this little. It was maybe about that sort of size, slightly bigger. I don't have both. I'm holding the phone in one hand, so I can't do. But it was like, it wasn't fully formed. It was still like a fetus. Like, You could tell it was a lamb, but it looked like an alien. So we knew that one yow had had a miscarriage, so there could be a number of reasons for that. It could be that the yow is struggling to get nutrition, that she's not in great condition. It could be illness. There could be some kind of infection or illness or something that could cause it. It could be that, for example, if they get stressed out. So that's one thing. As a farmer, you have to be careful when you're handling your sheep while they're pregnant, because it could result in a miscarriage. Or if if you're stressing them out too much, or if somebody's dog chases them or stresses them out, then they can have a miscarriage. Or even like you'll watch a sheep in the field like headbutting each other, and you're like, would you stop that? Like, you're pregnant, be careful. So there's a whole host of reasons why they might have a miscarriage. If it's like the one, so we found one fetus, we didn't send it off for testing or anything because it was just one. If we were to find like several, then we would be like, you can send them off for testing and find out what is causing it, because that would imply that there's some kind of infection or like something transmittable that's going through your flock. So things like toxoplasmosis or things. That's why pregnant women can't be around pregnant sheep. I'm grateful I'm never going to be pregnant at lambing time again, because that's so stressful. Not being able to get involved. So yeah, so that's it's normal for that to happen, but obviously if you had lots of cases, you'd be then concerned. Then when it comes to the lamb actually arriving, you can have difficult births. So we had one lamb where the yow started to give birth in the middle of the night. There was complications. The yow wasn't able to successfully lamb herself, and by the time we got to it, then the lamb was dead. We also had a yow who had a stillbirth. We found her in the morning. She lambed herself, but she hadn't cleaned the lamb, and it's an older yow who knows what she's doing. So we believe it was stillborn and she just knew it was dead, so she didn't clean it. We managed to successfully adopt a lamb onto her, because we had triplets. We managed to successfully adopt one of the triplets onto her, and she was such a good mum. And then the lamb that we adopted onto her went and got out the fence and basically froze, starved out on the beach, because it couldn't get back through the fence because it was stupid. And the poor mum was distraught. She was searching for him for days, and like, she accepted that lamb so happily, even though it wasn't hers. Like, sometimes you have to take like quite extreme steps to get a yow to accept a lamb, whereas she was just like, we literally just like rubbed her dead lamb on it slightly, and she was like, okay, I'll have it, it's mine. She accepted it so happily. And she hardly had any milk because it had been a couple of days since she'd given birth, but we were like feeding her up and trying to get her milk supply in and everything, chopping up the lamb and doing everything we could, and she was being such a good mum. And then the stupid lamb got out, and I found it out on the beach in the morning, and it was still alive. But I didn't make it because it had been freezing cold. It got too cold, and I'd gone too long without a feed, and it was devastating, because it was such a success story with the mum, and I was so happy for the mum, and then I was so devastated when, like, even now when I see her out in the field, I'm like, I'm so sorry, like, and I have to remind myself that they're sheep, they don't have the same emotions that we do. It's an instinct thing, it's not like like, they're not the same as us. And I can maybe go into that in more detail, but like, basically, like, a sheep will have her lamb until it's like weaned, and then she's like, go away, and she'll like headbutt it away from her and be like, be gone. Like, they don't keep their children for life, kind of thing. They don't, if you have a flock of sheep where you don't take away the lambs, the yows don't continue looking after their lambs. They're like, once the lambs is grown, they're like, get out of here. And they'll search for their lamb for like a few days while they have an udder full of milk that's uncomfortable. But if you feed them, they're like, they'll forget what they were searching for, kind of thing. It's not the same, it's more like an instinct thing. And they have a very good instinct to know, I've got a lamb, I must. And it's amazing how the sheep that have twins, they know, they can count to two, like they know, hang on, I've got another one here somewhere. And so it's really good instincts, but it's not the same. So when you see a sheep baying for its child, it's more an instinct thing rather than the same as what we have. But it's so easy to transfer our human emotions and thoughts and feelings. And it's, yes, the sheep will be getting distressed, like because the instinct's telling them, where's my lamb? And it's not there. So it will be distressing for them, but it's not in the same scale as a human who's lost a child. But it's still, as a human who's recently had a child, it's very emotional. Like, it's very upsetting. And especially when that was one of my success stories, that was like when other lambs were dying, that was the one I was like, well, this went really well. And then it died too. So that's, yeah, so bad births. Things that kill lambs. So we've had a bad birth. Illness. So I mentioned about lambing indoors, so that's an increased risk of infection. So you can have basically bacteria entering in through the navel, and it can cause like joint ill or navel ill. They can also get if a lamb was to be, say, infected with like parasites, it could kill a lamb, whereas like an adult sheep would be okay, but a little lamb, it could kill it. You could have, there's like a bunch of different things. So one thing we've struggled with this year is vitamin K deficiency. Not vitamin K. Vitamin B deficiency. Vitamin B deficiency, which can, in sheep, they don't get vitamin B from the food they eat, they get it from the bacteria in their rumen produces vitamin B, and it's important for brain function. And if they don't get enough vitamin B, then they can basically have seizures and stuff, and it can cause brain damage and eventually kill the lamb. We've had two lambs with seizures, and I've got this amazing textbook that's got all this veterinary information, but there's no answer for why it happens if they end up being vitamin B deficient. The first lamb that we had having seizures, we had these twins born on this one day. One was like this tiny little runt that it was cold and didn't get fed quick enough. And when my husband went out in the morning, he thought it was dead. He picked it up to go dispose of it, and then it blinked at him and he was like, oh, it's still alive. And so he came in at like 5 o'clock in the morning and woke me up and was like, here's a lamb, deal with it. So I had to warm it up, I had to tube feed it, I had to get it colostrum, get it warmed up, bring it back, basically back from the dead. Its twin was this big, beautiful, thriving twin lamb. It just, a beautiful lamb. I'd spent so much time trying to save its twin. That lamb was doing great. She was feeding well, she was thriving. The day after they were born, she'd been doing great, and then just suddenly she started having seizures. And it was a case of phone the vet, ask advice. They told me what medication I needed. I did a shout out on Facebook in the local community because I live on a small island. There's no vets on the island I live on. They're like on the mainland of Shetland. And so I phoned them for advice, but we would never have them come out and visit the farm because it's just not cost effective. But they were like, ask around. They told me what I needed and what I needed to do, and I basically needed to get this vitamin B, give the lamb injections. And so I did a shout out on Facebook and found a neighbour who had somebody my husband works with, because there's lots of crofters here. We have lots of people with sheep, and it was really heartening, like the community spirit. So we found we found like the right medication and got the lamb treated, but sadly she didn't make it. And at that point in time, I didn't think her sister would either, because she was such a little runty thing, and I was just like, there's no way this other little one's gonna make it. So that was like really disheartening. That was the same sort of time frame when the other lamb was getting adopted onto the ewe, and then it died, and it was like everything happened that 1 week. It was horrendous. Not everything, but a lot of it happened that 1 week. Basically, it was one day we had 6 lambs born and only 2 of them are still alive, and that was just, there was like, they died a day after each other, like boom, 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 and you were just like, would you stop it? So this the little twin that was like my husband thought was dead, she's still on the go. So I'm gonna have, she's number 7. There'll be some footage of her at the end of this video, because she brings me joy. She's one of the ones I was too scared to get attached to, because I was worried that she would die too. And even now I'm kind of like, don't you dare, don't you dare. Every time I go out to check on them, I'm like, where is she? Where is she? Make sure she's still alive. But she's doing really good, and it brings me so much joy, because I didn't think she was going to make it. We hit a point where we had 2 runty lambs inside whose siblings had all died, and we had to just make the call to just put them out with the mums, and if they made it, they made it, and if they didn't, they didn't. And one of them didn't make it, but she did. So I'm really proud of her. And because it's better for the mothers to be outside, because then they get better milk, they'd be able to eat the grass, then their milk would come in better and everything. So it's basically, we just made the call to put them outside, and if they made it, so be it. So little number 7's made it. So that's, yeah. So so her twin, vitamin B deficiency. We had another lamb, again a few days old, a twin. I found out in the field having seizures. With him, I was able to get him in, get him treated, warmed up, tube fed, and he made it. He pulled through. And then like a day later, when I went to go and return him to his mum, I didn't know if she'd accept him back. Like, it'd been a day. As soon as she heard him, she was like calling out to him and came running and like was like giving my lamb back. But unfortunately, we discovered that she didn't have enough milk for 2 lambs. She basically says hard bag on one side. It's where the one side of the udder is like rock hard. There's no milk. She's only got milk on one side. And so she just didn't have enough milk to feed 2 lambs. So what we've been doing is I've been bottle feeding him. Been going out bottle feeding him, like, it was 4 times a day. I'm now down to 3 times a day. But he's still with his mum. His mum gets really upset when I come out and bottle. He'll come running to me when he sees me with the bottle, thankfully, because to start with I was having to catch him, which was difficult because he was getting fast, and then bottle feed him. Now he'll come running, I can feed him, and then once he's got a full belly, he runs back to his mum again. And I mean, she's looking after it. The problem with caddy lambs is they don't normally know how to be sheep, and they don't have a mum looking after them. So he's got a mum out in the field looking after him, protecting him from birds, a nice big warm mum to cuddle up behind if it's bad weather. So many reasons why having a mother is good. Happy Mother's Day belated. Mothers are awesome. But he's getting the top up feeds he needs, and because he's getting fed, it means that the mum's milk is available for his twin, so he's getting plenty too. So they're both, I mean, they're getting chunky, they're doing really good. So that makes me happy. So that's been one of the positives from lambing time. So things that kill lambs, we've got lambing complications, which is childbirth. It's a risky, difficult time, same with people. We've got illnesses or deficiencies or those sort of things, so like something that may or may not be treatable depending on how established it is. We have a host of different medications here that, each year when something new happens that we've never encountered before, the next year we make sure we've got the stuff required to treat it. So we've got antibiotics, we now have vitamin B. It's having that stuff on hand to treat if you need to. Feeding issues. So we had the triplet that got adopted on. His 2 siblings were just put out in the field with their mother. There was a lot going on that day. There was a sheep that needed help with the birth and everything else. A lot going on that day. By the time I was able to get back and check on the mother and the lambs were almost dead, because it's really important they get a feed within the first like 4 to 6 hours. Get a good feed of colostrum. It's full, just like with humans, it's full of good stuff. Lambs who don't get a feed of colostrum early on are more likely to have issues later. And also, if it was bitterly cold that day, so it was bitterly cold, they hadn't had a belly full of warmth, and so basically, because a mother had massive nipples and they couldn't latch on. So as a sheep farmer, I'm not just a midwife, I'm also a breastfeeding consultant, and lactation specialist. So we had to bring the sheep in, we had to milk her, we had to, tube feed the lambs, we had to warm the lambs up, tube feed them, and get them back to the mum. And they both came out, they were doing well. And then one of the lambs, the biggest, healthiest one, got out of the pen that night, couldn't get back into its mum, and died overnight. And then we just made the call to just put the last triplet out with its mother, and he didn't make it. I think there was something, I think basically almost freezing to death and starving to death kind of addled his brain, because he never fed properly, and we tried and tried, but he was just never feeding properly, so he didn't make it. He looked like he was maybe going to, and then he didn't make it. So that was really heartbreaking, because we lost all 3 triplets. The mother was pretty useless though, unfortunately. So feeding is so important, and so there's a few years, like there was one year that we knew had big nipples, so we basically brought her and the lambs in, made sure that they were latching on well, made sure they were feeding well. Most lambs know what to do. Sometimes there might be an issue with the ewe, sometimes there might be an issue with the lamb, and it just needs a bit of help, just learning how to latch. So that's kind of not getting that belly full of milk quick enough. And we've generally been good this year about making sure that happens. We've been trying to keep on top of that. But that was one where we slipped up because there was so much other stuff happening that day. So I've been obsessively, we have the maternity ward where the field where the sheep are giving birth in. And then we have the nursery where we put the lambs until they're about 3 days old. So making sure that they're established. And then we were moving them to what we're calling kindergarten, and then now they're out in the bigger field, where they can spread out more and everything. So in the nursery, those first 3 days, I was going around obsessively lifting up lambs to see how heavy they are, and yeah, just obsessively just walking around lifting up lambs, just making sure that they've got enough weight to them that I know that they're getting milk. So the things that kill lambs was the birthing complications. I did a lambing course to learn how to help assist with lambing. There's quite a few lambings I've assisted with this year that we've managed to have good outcomes, but there's a few that haven't had good outcomes. We've had illnesses, that kind of stuff. We've the feeding issues, we've talked about that, and predator strikes. So we did have a bird strike this year. Got one lamb, but that's a lot less than last year, so that's good. Was there anything else? And just sheep being sheep. Just sometimes you'll go out and you'll find a dead lamb and there's no obvious signs of why. It just happens, and it can be really distressing because you don't know. Again, it's one of those things where if you had a lot of it, you would send them off to testing to make sure it's not something contagious or to find out what's going on. Whereas when it's just, you know, the odd one, then you're like, oh well. Because we had the first of our Shetland sheep to give birth, she was like a good like week or two before any of the rest of them, and that lamb didn't make it. It died a few days old, and there was no obvious signs of anything wrong with it. But I think it maybe just wasn't maybe fully properly formed or something. I think it was maybe premature. So yeah, it's one of those. It's quite harrowing. Lambing time. It's it can be really tough. But then there's been times which bring you real joy. So I've got footage in to come of like number 7, the one who, the little runt whose sister died, but she's doing great. I've got footage of 30, the bottle fed one, that's like really just doing well. And he was literally, I thought he was gonna die, because he was like at death's door, but he's made it and he's doing really good. We had a lamb with like with turned in eyelids, and so that like the eyes were getting like ulcerated and sore. We managed to fix that, and he's doing really good. So you kind of have to learn. I've had to tube feed lambs for the first time this year. I've had to deal with prolapses and yows for the first time this year. I've had to. I've been doing injections in lambs and yows. I've been dealing with turned in eyelids. Been dealing with like all sorts of different things. So you kind of have to be able to wear lots of different hats if you're going to work with sheep. You can't be squeamish. And one thing this year we've had to be really like on the ball with is that first time mothers are quite bad about giving birth and not really understanding what's just happened. Think of it like a teenage pregnancy who hasn't had any sex ed, doesn't know what's happening, doesn't realise they're pregnant, goes into labour, gives birth. That would be quite a traumatic experience if you don't know what's happening. And then suddenly they have a baby. So a lot of the first timers, they've never done it before. The instincts maybe haven't kicked in yet. And especially when we've had to intervene, a lot of them will give birth and then want to run away, because if we've had to intervene, it's been probably quite a difficult birth, so they'll be sore and they'll want to run away. And so we've had to bring those ones inside for like a day or so. Some of them just for a few hours, just to kind of calm down from the birth and for the instinct to kick in, and for them to like clean the baby and everything else. So I've got some footage of a little brand new newborn lamb who's all covered in slime. He's literally just been born, and his mum ran away because I had to help lamb her. It was quite a difficult birth for her. She ran off, left her lamb. We had to catch her, took them inside, but we left them for like a short period of time, and then the instinct kicked in for her, and she was like, they do this guttural like grumbly noise to their lambs, which is like my favourite sound ever. And she's like grumbling away to him, and she's like cleaning him and licking him and doing an amazingly brilliant job. So I've got footage of that. We had several of those this year because we've had quite a few first time mothers who were like, I'm out here. There was one I was watching, she lambed herself, no problem, and I was just watching her from the house because, you know, you keep check them like every so many, like every hour or two, make sure that there's nothing happening, and as soon as you spot something, you know, you learn to see the signs of a yow that's going into labour, and you keep a close eye. If they can do it themselves, you leave them to it, because if they're able to just get on with it themselves, it's better if you don't intervene, don't stress them out, just let them get on with it. Let them bond with the lamb. Then I'll come in once they've had a chance to bond for a little bit. I'll iodine the lamb's navel. We give them a little shot of Kickstart. It's like a mineral booster thing for the lamb, and kind of like, and then we'll leave them to it as much as possible. Just leave them to get on with it, which is why it's difficult to then also make sure that the lamb's getting milk and that the yow has got enough milk, and it's getting that balance of intervening with letting them get on with it, because nature is amazing and instinct knows what to do. it's like humans as well, we instinctively know what to do, but so often we get obsessed with like books and people telling us their opinions on what we should and shouldn't be doing. You instinctively know how to give birth, you instinctively know how to feed your child, like you instinctively know how to raise your child. It's instinct. Trust your instinct. So yeah, it's really beautiful when you watch sheep, the instinct kicking in, and when they stamp their feet at you when you approach, because they're like, this is my lamb, and they're protecting it. And it was interesting because like you get some sheep that are like not so friendly, and so they'll like just want to run away from you. We've had some yows though that are like more used to us, or more friendlier yows. I had one yow who was having twins, and I had to intervene and help to lamb the first one. So I went down there and I helped her lamb the first one. My husband held her and I helped get the lamb out and handed it over to her, and she literally like was so busy licking the lamb that she was like licking my hands as well. Like if they were in the way, she was like licking me as well, and just so like right into it. And me and my husband just sat back, like literally just like a couple meters away, like really not very far, and just watched. And she lambed the second one herself, no problem. But she was so chilled out with us being there that she didn't mind. Whereas some of them will get quite stressed out with you being there, so you'd want to kind of like give them space. But as much as possible, we let them do it themselves, but then intervene when they need the help. But yeah, sometimes they then run away, and then you have to catch them and bring them back again. So this video has gone on really long, far longer than I meant it to. I've rambled a lot, so I've kind of discussed what can go wrong, all the different things that can go wrong. And we've had a bit of everything this year. It's been really heartbreaking. We've tried to learn some lessons and things we'll try and do better next year. It is what it is though, like there's nothing you can do. We do have a whole heap of beautiful healthy lambs that we will continue to do our best to look after and do our best by. And yeah, so I've got some footage, as I said, of a brand new born lamb whose mum's run off and left him, and then them inside with the mum. The maternal instincts kicked in and she's doing her job and doing a really great job with it. I've got footage of lambs frolicking around. I've got footage of 7 trying to eat me. I've got footage of 30 also trying to eat me, but looking really happy and healthy. And yeah, just a ramble video talking about the issues with lambing. If there's anything else you'd like to learn about farming, about crofting, about sheeping, about anything like that, then I'm happy to share. I'm aware this has been a very long video. But yeah, top tip, lambing with a toddler, do not recommend. It's really hard work. Yeah, it's been tough. It's been a really tough month. And I'm looking forward to having some kind of a break and doing something else. But anyway, some lamb footage. I said I'm going to do an ethics video at some point, but then we're going to have some non-sheep related content, because it's been really tough and I kind of want a break from sheep. But anyway, you guys take care and I'll see you again sometime soon. Bye bye.
Hello? Aren't you a cutie? Yes, we need to catch your mammy. Hi. Hi. Aren't you a cutie? I'll get you inside. Yeah. Get you inside nice and warm. Nice straw bed. Yeah? That'd be good. That'd be good. Such a good mommy, aren't you? Are you doing a good job? Yeah, you're doing a really good job, sweet pea. Yeah, you're doing a good job, darling. Yeah, good lass. Hi, little guy. No. Hey. What you saying, pretty guy? What you saying? Good mommy. There you go. There he is back again. Good mommy. You are such a good mommy. Although, where's your other child? Hi, Zippy. Hello, my darling. Hi. Can I help you? Hey, that's my brakes. Stop, stop, it's in my brakes. Stop that. Stop that. Stop that. Stop that. Stop that.